At 74 years old, it's a cold night in Stockholm, and the waters of Lake Mälaren reflect the dim lights of a city that has seen Agnetha Faltskog through her best and worst times. In a quiet, dimly lit room, Agnetha is finally ready to talk about her past. Her words are careful and brave, and her voice is now softer but still carries the emotional clarity that made ABBA's songs come to life. She tells a secret story. For decades, fans have wondered what really happened between Agnetha and her ex-husband Bjorn Ulvaeus, whom she divorced in 1980. Now she's ready to say in her own words why she made that hard choice. The 1970s were the best years for Swedish pop star ABBA, who became famous all over the world. Bjorn and Benny wrote unforgettable hits, and Agnetha and Annie Fried added their signature vocals. Fans couldn't get enough of ABBA's sound. Fame has a way of hiding flaws, and beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect relationship, they were falling apart. Agnetha now says that while their music brought happiness to millions, her marriage was full of silent struggles. From the outside, it looked perfect, they sang hit after hit together, grinning for the cameras, but Agnetha's smile was often hiding her sadness. I felt like I was losing myself, she says, her voice shaking as she remembers those years. Bjorn was so focused on his work on the music that there was hardly any room left for us. Because of ABBA's rise, relentless dedication, but for Agnetha the pressure went beyond the stage. She was a mother, a wife and a pop star stretched between roles that left her exhausted and yearning for support that she couldn't find in her marriage. Fame changed Bjorn. She recalls the man she had fallen in love with was once attentive, supportive and shared her dreams, but as ABBA soared to new heights, Bjorn's passion for success became all-consuming. He spent countless hours perfecting songs, planning tours and overseeing production. Agnetha, by contrast, found herself overwhelmed by the intensity. She was already struggling with her role as a mother and the demands of constant travel. He became distant, like he was slipping away into a world of his own where I didn't belong. She confides, for Agnetha there was nothing worse than feeling invisible to the man she loved. Their lives became a performance, she says, smiling for the cameras, and pretending their relationship was intact while she felt her heart breaking, and while they shared the stage their private lives were drifting further apart. I wanted a partner, not just a bandmate, she says, her words heavy with decades of unspoken pain, but it seemed like Bjorn was already married to the music. Behind the scenes, Agnetha faced battles that few could imagine. As a mother, she wrestled with the guilt of being away from her children for long periods, often on grueling tours across continents. Every day away from them weighed on her, but returning home didn't always mean peace. Her heart longed for a quiet life, a place where she could balance motherhood with music without feeling torn. But Bjorn's drive was relentless, his ambition boundless. For him, ABBA was everything. Agnetha describes how loneliness crept into her life during these years. Surrounded by crowds of adoring fans, she felt isolated. Bjorn, wrapped in his own dreams, seemed to offer little comfort. It's hard to explain, she says softly, her gaze distant. I was in a marriage, but I felt alone. And that loneliness, it wears you down. The walls of her home, once a sanctuary, had become a reminder of her isolation, and it was this quiet suffering that began to erode her love for Bjorn. The tension between them was rarely expressed in explosive fights, she explains. Instead, it simmered under to the surface, growing with each day of silent discontent. There were small things. Alessandro felt trapped because Bjorn put work above all else and wanted to be in charge of every detail, even when they weren't making music. She felt like she was losing her voice in both the music and her life. One time she remembers very clearly was when they had a rare evening to themselves, away from the band and the demands of the industry. She poured out her heart to him, hoping he'd understand her need for balance and peace, but he brushed her off, saying they had to stay strong for the sake of ABBA. She remembers the memory with tears in her eyes. It felt like a slap in the face. It was like his feelings didn't matter. He was so caught up in his own world that he couldn't see her pain after years of ignoring her own needs. Agnetha reached her breaking point. It wasn't one dramatic incident, but a realization that her happiness and her identity had been slipping away. I remember waking up one morning and feeling empty, she shares, her voice barely above a whisper. She looked in the mirror and saw a woman who had given everything to a relationship that seemed to only take. It was a painful moment, but one that brought clarity. She could no longer live as a shadow of herself. Making the decision to leave was agonizing. She Knew it would shatter the image fans had of ABBA as the perfect group united both on and off stage, but Agnetha also knew that staying in a marriage that drained her was no longer an option. It wasn't easy, she confesses, her voice heavy with the weight of the past, but I realized that if I didn't leave I'd lose myself completely. And so in 1980 the couple announced their divorce, shaking the world and forever altering the dynamic within ABBA. Leaving Bjorn wasn't the end of her challenges but a raw beginning. Free from the image of the perfect Swedish couple and the weight of ABBA's legacy, Agnes moved into a world where she didn't have to act for the cameras anymore. But freedom came with a cost. The lights went out on ABBA and the band went their separate ways. It was very quiet when Agnes was thrown into it, and it brought out everything she had been hiding. Fame had taken her so high, and now the fall was scary because it left her alone in ways she hadn't planned for. Her name was still on everyone's lips, but her heart was tired and needed something real. The years after ABBA's breakup were not happy. She was constantly hounded by the press, eager to exploit her weaknesses. Every date, every new song, and every connection she tried to build were all looked at through the lens of her privacy. The world seemed to forget that she was a person who needed space to heal, so she chose to be alone and had to. She went to the Swedish countryside and found comfort in nature, where the open skies and rustling trees gave her comfort that no stage or spotlight could. Her days became easier as she became grounded in the rhythm of nature, far from the glitzy chaos. She tried to find peace, but memories of her past weighed heavily on her. There were times of joy and pain that were forever linked to both, and Bjorn's face was a part of both. I needed to understand who I was without ABBA and without Bjorn, she says. Anthena's heart, once filled with the thrill of stardom, was now learning to beat to a quieter life. It was hard for her to let go of the dream they had once shared, a vision that seemed to be in every part of her life. There were days when she wondered if she had made the right choice, but deep down she knew she could never go back to a life that had almost consumed her. Agnetha slowly put herself back together. Each year, she got stronger and her sense of self came back to her like a lost friend. She put all of her heart into her solo music, making albums that were a mirror of her own life. Her own story. Her voice still had the same creepy quality to it. Beauty took on new levels of strength and weakness. Fans heard her pain, her triumph, and her journey, and it hit them hard. It also drew in new fans who saw parts of their own problems in her songs. During her healing, her music became a reflection of her finding herself after years of giving so much to others. Now that she is 74 years old, Agnetha has come to terms with the decisions that used to weigh her down like an anchor. She knows that leaving Bjorn wasn't a failure or a loss, it was a necessary act of self-respect. It wasn't just about leaving him, she says, it was about reclaiming my happiness. She sees now that her decision to walk away wasn't just a step out of a marriage, it was a leap into her own life, where her happiness, voice, and peace took center stage. In her later years, she has found the clarity she was looking for. The journey wasn't easy, but she knows it has brought her closer to herself than ever before. There is no anger in her heart, instead, she has a deep understanding of how life's hardest times often lead to its best gifts. For Agnetha, the legacy she now cherishes is not the fame, the records, or the tours, but the strength it took to walk away and finally stand as herself, fearless and free as she tells her story now. Agnetha's words have a message for people who have felt stuck or invisible in their relationships. Don't lose yourself for someone else's dream. It took me years to realize this, but choosing yourself is sometimes the bravest thing you can do.